Okay, kids, let's talk about the good old days growing up in Idaho. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Growing Up in Idaho, talking about the good old days. Hopefully your week has gone well, and if you've been getting ready to get the kids back to school, I hope you're able to stay sane. The going back to school stuff is in every store. Have you noticed that? Except for some of my favorite places like the hardware store. You don't see any school stuff there, thankfully. But you know what I'm talking about. The last time I walked into a grocery store, I had to find the essentials I was looking for behind all the paper and pencils and notebooks on sale. So that's a sure sign that the little kiddos are getting ready to go back to school. Kind of a happy time for some, maybe the parents. And for the kids, it's a drudgery. And so, the going back to school season really hasn't changed since I was a kid, at least as far as I know. Well, maybe there's some things that have changed from those days in the 70s and early 80s. So what about year-round school? That happens here in Utah sometimes. And I know some people who are crammed into that paradigm even now. I was part of that one year when my kids were little. According to the school district, they couldn't create small class sizes without doing year-round school, so we were stuck with that. It was crazy. And thankfully, we left Utah to move to Wyoming, and that all ended. We were happy about that. That was one thing we were happy to leave behind. Having summer vacation in some weird time like the middle of winter, that's craziness. Now my kiddos have their own school kids to get ready for, except for my daughter who homeschools. And then they have their own little package of fun things to look forward to. But back to school. It's not what this podcast is about today. It's about the time-honored celebration of summer. When you're a kid. Remember when you were a kid and you started dreaming about summer vacation? For me, that all started about the middle of October and went until the last week of May or the 1st of June when school actually did let out. It'd be like, "Hey, Mr. Hicks, are you daydreaming again? Pay attention, young man, or there's going to be trouble." I'd be sitting there looking out the window, especially on those warm fall days when the sun was out, and I'd be dreaming about the last day of school 7 months away. It was terrible. Summer for me as a kid was always a hodgepodge of getting chores done so I could disappear for the rest of the day. Of course, most of you know how that went, right? In my house, growing up, the operations manager was a short, petite, dark-haired lady named Bertie. Nobody with any brains ever questioned the fact that she was the boss in that house, and it was Bertie, the cooker of fine foods and chore sheriff. And if things were not done to her expectations, it was due overtime. Occasionally, the boss wielded the wooden spoon and wasn't afraid to use it. Anyway, I learned early that fighting City Hall was problematic and painful, so I just got my crap done so I could disappear for the rest of the day. My brother Mike was a lot like me, albeit he was braver and wasn't afraid to live on the edge and piss Bertie off once in a while. And he always paid the price. But like a good big brother, he was a good example of what not to do. And I loved him for blazing those intricate trails for me and helping me understand what would cause Bertie to lose control and come after her kids with the lethal weapon. We got those chores done quickly and efficiently and were soon out of the house doing our own thing. And by that I mean we had all of the Salmon Valley in central Idaho to roam and do whatever we wanted. There were no boundaries, except for maybe time. We were expected to be home for dinner, and dinner was around 6 p.m. Hunger was always a good motivator to stop what we were doing and head home. Some of you understand that well, I'm sure. In 1974, when I was 10, Mike would have been 12. We liked shooting things up with our guns like most kids our age. That year, Dad bought me a nice Marlin 22 for hunting, and Mike got a shotgun, a single shot. I always felt sorry for him, standing there while we were shooting, fumbling around with his gun trying to get a round in the chamber, while I was over there burning through rounds like a Gatling gun. The next year, he got smart and started carrying Dad's 30-30. It was a lever-action saddle gun. He took that thing everywhere we went, at least a lot of those places. Obviously, it would hold more rounds than his old 12-gauge. I still had the edge in volume of firepower, though, because his rounds were more expensive, even though he reloaded his own. We had a little Lee loader. Some of you may remember those. Anyway, we were always armed to the teeth on many of our excursions into the mountains or wherever we were traveling, by foot or by bicycle. The overall weight and volume of the Salmon Valley raised by no less than 1,000 pounds due to all the lead flying out of the end of our guns. When our best friend Richard Putnam was in town, he always used Dad's little single-shot 22. But we had fun, and our skills with guns increased exponentially. But you know, Dad was always the czar of gun safety, and for good reason. He made sure his boys towed the line when it came to our guns. We weren't allowed to take sound shots, for example, or to cover anyone with the end of our gun, or do anything stupid like walk in the house with our gun loaded and cocked. Stupidity was forbidden in those days. It was a code of conduct, shared not only by Mike and me, but all our close friends and most of the kids we knew in the valley. That's not to say we didn't occasionally live on the edge. Like the day we found an old chunk of 1/4-inch well casing. It was a steel pipe, basically. And we slung that over the fence post in the front yard. That day it was my cousin's .50 caliber Hawken muzzleloader we used to shoot the daylights out of the casing. My cousin Rick Young had just created a bunch of new lead balls that just had to be shot. So we stood on our front porch and took turns shooting divots in that casing. Every shot fired, that lead would splinter and blow off in 1,000 different directions. The stupidity factor had not registered yet, and we were having a ball. That is until Mike Hicks, my dad, showed up on the scene. He whipped open the front door and said, "What the hell are you guys doing? Don't you know one of those pieces of lead could ricochet back and kill one of you? Or even worse? Take that gun out of the way from the house a bit further. You're scaring your mom. Damn kids." Then he slammed the door shut. "Sorry, Dad," I heard someone say. Anyway, we liked to do any kind of outdoorsy stuff. Being trapped in the house, even on a stormy day, was murderous. We often went camping during those summer vacations. If we weren't camping, we were planning a camping trip. Mike and me were always in the mode of planning something fun. One summer, Richard Putnam stayed with us for the summer, so we had his input during those planning sessions. It was the summer when I was 12 years old. Having Richard around was great. He was our best friend when we lived in Boise, and we couldn't wait for him to visit. Every day was a new adventure, and he wasn't opposed to offering a helping hand in getting the chores done, which we greatly appreciated. One week, we planned the granddaddy camping trip of them all. Dad agreed to haul us a few miles up the canyon to the Prow Creek beaver ponds, if any of you know where those are at. Or at least where they used to be. The last time I was up there, they were kind of overgrown. Not many ponds left anymore. So we loaded all our crap, our sleeping bags, the Dutch ovens, and our guns and ammunition, and plenty of food, and headed out. Dad took us up, stopped right there in the road next to the ponds, and threw our crap off the truck and left. Said, "Be back by Sunday," actually Saturday night, but since church was on Sunday. That was our only expectation, be back by Saturday night. So we had some time to hang out and not have any authority hanging over our heads. So this particular camping trip would prove how fragile life could be if we weren't paying attention. I remember it well. We were 3 boys whose greatest goal was to maximize our free time and have a good time. But a brush with death would wake us up to something bigger in life. A few months ago, I revisited this site of our old camp, that same camp by the beaver ponds. A lot had changed over the 40-some years we were there that week, but the memory still hangs on as clear as ever. And thankfully I had my little video recorder when I was up there, and Sarah got some footage of me talking about this very trip that I mentioned in this podcast. Let's go check out the video, and hopefully it'll explain things in a little more detail.